Hello and welcome Warhammer friends to a new modded faction overview and showcase. This episode, we're taking a look at a new Slaanesh faction called the Sect of Akhalee, Temple of Blood for Immortal Empires Expanded. Massive credits and major thank yous to the mod author Poljanin for taking the time and effort to really bring this faction to life in terms of both the legendary lord and also the units, which we will get into later in the video. And as a side note, I do want to say that you do need Mixu's Unlocker and also Immortal Empires Expanded mod from Chaos Robbie, because even though it says on the map that you start here close to the Lustria region, you actually do start off in the Ind and Khuresh region, which also has ties to this legendary lord's background. Now, I don't want to dive too deep into the lore. If you want to read it, you can check it out on the mod page itself, which I will leave in the pinned comment, but let's go over a brief introduction on what this faction is all about. Based on the lore bits in-game and also from what I was able to get off the mod description, Mahaduva, the Deva of Blood, is known to be a traveling demonette of Slaanesh from what it sounds like. She does have a bit of an origin story in Araby and also taking her debauchery all the way into the lands of Ind and also corrupting the Rajput warriors there to become her marauding band of personal warriors too, which you do get a starting unit of them as well as some dual-wielding Rajput warriors too, very much Slaaneshi with their garb and also from the look of their weapon choices too. Now, also based off the mod description, it seems as though the people of Ind have their version of Slaanesh, which is known as Akhalee, the Prince of Murder and Blood, spelling a foreboding fate on the land of 1,000 gods should the entity's thirst for blood be allowed to continue unabated. Now, that is a little bit of a mix of Slaanesh from what it sounds like, but also maybe a little bit of Dark Elf lore and culture too, mainly with Cainite blood and assassinations and such. The land of Ind is still a bit of a mystery to some of the Warhammer community. However, some major characters have briefly mentioned it, such as Lockyer Felhard, who has raided several temples there before too. But like I said, I don't want to ramble on too much about the lore because it would bloat this video out of proportion. Although, if we want to talk about it in the comments, please do let me know any lore bits and information on the land and people of Ind that also may pertain to the mod itself too. I will really genuinely want to hear more from you guys about it because I like nerding out about that stuff. Without further ado, let's get into the starting army and also faction and lord effects that you'll receive. So, you'll be getting some classic Slaanesh units like Devoted Marauders and also Exalted Demonettes of Slaanesh for your front line. You'll also get Fiends of Slaanesh for some cavalry charging too, but also taking a look at some of the faction-specific unique units, we will be getting Devoted Rajput Warriors and also Rajput Warriors with dual Katars, and these two units here, this one armor-piercing melee, and this one focusing on hemorrhaging strikes, which will be doing damage over time as well to your enemies. I like using these specifically for flanking maneuvers, not as fast as the Fiends of Slaanesh, but also for rounding about and being a little bit of a makeshift hammer and anvil, darting in and out of combat, if that makes sense. For faction effects, access to Blessed Pavartadar units through rituals. Now, these Pavartadari, the Sect of Akhalee, can recruit the services of elite Pavartadar units, which are powerful but limited units that can only be unlocked through the rituals. So yes, you do have to earn them and wait a little bit of time before you can actually get them too. Now, these units are expensive but can be called into an army immediately when the need arises. And that's the thing too, is yes, you do have to go through a lot of effort to earn them, and as you can see, they are pretty expensive both to buy and also to upkeep as well. However, you can instantly recruit them once you have access to them, so that's a pretty good trade-off in my opinion too. Unique ability, Way of Akhalee for all armies, melee attack and speed increased for our forces, gain devotees after winning battles, and also upkeep. Minus 40% for Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh units, really good for saving money on our economy there. And for the specific lord effects, recruit rank, +3 for devoted Rajput warrior units, Lord's Army. Devotees gain 30% increase after winning a battle, and speed 10% for infantry units, Lord's Army. So, like I was saying before, the plus 10% speed is going to be a major buff for our Rajput warriors to be those flanking maneuver units, and for a little bit of surround and gang attack too. Taking a look at your starting position, you do start off the coast of Western Ind and are at war with the Corsair of Spite Dark Elves, which is added by the Immortal Empires Expanded mod, and you do have an army that is more than capable of taking them on. Now, to your east, you do have to contend with the Dwarves and also Empire with the guests of the Raja. Firebeard's excavators may be a little bit of a problem too, and you are essentially surrounded on all sides with enemies too. Now, a good strategy that could be considered is, after nearly wiping out the Dark Elves, potentially making them your vassal and thus having a bit of a semi-ally to help you against the Dwarves and the Empire. But once you have secured your foothold around this central location, you do have potential to raid into as far as Cathay itself if you want to feel ambitious, or exploring the other lands that are added by Chaos Robbie, and maybe even going so far into essentially Warhammer Korea too. Our starting army does have a Cultist of Slaanesh, which helps increase mobility of our army, hence why we're going to be able to conquer things really fast and expand quickly too. And taking a look at the skill tree of our legendary lord, some of it is close to vanilla, like the blue and red lines, as well as the lore of Slaanesh. However, we do have some unique abilities here, and also the different skill lines as well that are particular to decreasing the upkeep of our Marauders, and also especially for our elite Pavartadar units too. The minus 12% upkeep will be very useful in the late game, and also we will gain other things too, like increase devotees, and also massive abilities here too, like melee attack plus 36 and leadership plus 12. Leadership, that's going to be useful for our Slaanesh demon units, as we really don't want those to crumble. Womb of Bava Devata. Now, I am sorry if I do mispronounce some of these ability names, but decreasing the armor of your enemies in battle, and also our early one here, Vinash, heavy bleeding. And yes, if I didn't mention it before, this faction does focus on a lot of bleed damage over time with our units, so with Slaanesh already being a bit of a glass cannon and also dishing out some burst damage, it's going to really complement those damage and bleed effects over time. Going back to the expansion options, depending on how many other modded factions you include, your campaign playthrough may be medium to very difficult as well. I know I said Ind has a lot of potential in terms of growing your empire, but also I do love the fact of different dynamics and potentially having allies, vassals, or even really difficult modded enemies to test this faction out against. Do let me know in the comments as well how difficult you thought this campaign was in terms of either having just the required items to run this faction, or also if you added other modded factions to, like I said, add a little bit of dynamic and maybe even a potential challenge as well. Taking an up close and personal look of the different units you get with this mod, I am absolutely loving the gladiatorial look and vibes of both the dual wielding Qatar Rajput warriors and also the normal sword and board units too. There is a lot of fine details as well in terms of looking at the varying armors for a lot of the individual units in here too, some of them even having beastmen hooves, so you just get a lot of different diversity when it comes to these makeshift marauder units as well. Now, with the devoted Rajput warriors that are shielded, these are going to be potentially your typical frontline as well. They can still flank just like the dual Qatar wielding ones, and there is only slight differences in terms of the different bonuses and negatives that each has. With the shielded sword and board ones, they have a higher melee defense and weapon strength, but also with the Qatar ones, they have a higher melee attack and also charge bonus too. So these can work hand in hand in conjunction with each other, with the shielded sword and board ones taking the damage, and then the dual Qatars rounding about and supporting them in the back. Now, moving on to the different elite Pavartadar units, we have elite greatsword infantry with the Pavartadar Rajputs that are armor-piercing melee and a melee expert. So these are essentially going, it doesn't say anti-infantry, but they are definitely able to hold their own and act as potential frontliners too. More so upgrades to these Rajput warriors. And also we have Pavartadar Yakshas, which are your halberd infantry, armored and shielded, armor-piercing melee, anti-large, and causing terror among the enemy ranks too. So just imagining both of these working hand in hand, just like the last two units as well. These taking the brunt of the damage, these also dishing out the damage too, and also the Yakshas giving a bit of terror to rout the enemy as well. And also having a very devoted front line for Slaanesh. It's not really what Slaanesh is known for, but also I absolutely love the designs of these tiger dragon helmets, and also the look of these greatswords too, rusted but still deadly too. There's a mix of different regality and royalty, I should say, with the random makeshift armor pieces too. These ones being more so akin to actual royal guards as well. And I know I'm getting way ahead of myself, but taking a look here with the Tigermen. Tigermen are some of my favorite lore pieces of the Ind and Khuresh regions. And also, we do have Pavartadar Devatas, which are kind of like exalted demonettes too. It very much of an ancient Indian lore, mythical design too. And it's really fitting of the seductive look that Slaanesh gives as well. Not so much for the Tigerman, but also it is pretty nice to have a little bit of extra variety with this monstrous infantry. With armor-piercing melee, vanguard deployment, causing terror, and the ability to stalk, and the fact that a monster infantry like this has stalk and essentially sneak attack, you could essentially make them like better elite trolls essentially. Both of these units can also vanguard deploy, Pavartadar Devatas, armor-piercing melee, anti-infantry, and the soporific musk of Slaanesh to lower the ability to attack and defend yourself. These are essentially your elite of the elite units for this faction here too. And the final unit is a single entity monster, the Pavartadar Asura, armor-piercing melee, anti-large, and frenzy with a high amount of damage whilst its leadership is high. I like to essentially see it as an almost equal to your legendary lord. It's almost the same height as well. Plus also, it's going to be your bruiser, basically the single entity that goes in, wrecks front lines, and also can single out enemy heroes and lords to duel them one-on-one. And speaking of duels, we are going to take our entire army and send them up against the High Elves in the showcase battle. Let me know, everyone, your thoughts on these different units as well. The Asura, absolutely digging the design too. Again, very ancient Indian lore-esque kinds of designs and armor pieces here too. And also it's got kind of that unique demon vibe. And yes, I know Slaanesh and other chaos factions have that demon vibe to them too. However, there's just something about it that combines the real world art pieces of Indian culture with the design and grimdark aesthetics of Warhammer Fantasy. We'll be wrapping up the video here with this makeshift battle that I'll be sending you all off with, but let me know your thoughts on the faction, the units, the legendary lord, and also do let me know what other factions or mods you would like me to cover in my future videos too. I absolutely love the modding communities for both Warhammer and Baldur's Gate, and that's essentially something that I'm really passionate about on this channel as well. If you would love to see a campaign playthrough of this faction or other modded factions, do let me know in the comments below. It's modded factions like this that not only add a whole ton of replayability to the game, but also, genuinely speaking, adds a lot of life and also a bit of character, if that makes sense, to the game world itself. I'm obviously a huge, massive nerd when it comes to the world and lore of Warhammer, but also just seeing the designs of the different races and cultures, it really gets me invested in things like this, and I hope it's something that all of you can feel the same way about too. But anyways, enjoy this upcoming battle, friends, and I'll save you all a seat at the table for the next adventure. Take care and farewell.
Who can I blame? slaughter!